All right, we're just getting started here. Just want to double check that the streams are working. The bits are flowing. Let's see. Instagram, you're on. Okay, I think we're doing it. I think it's real life. I don't think I forgot anything this time. Guess we'll find out. Cool. If you're joining in the chat, give me a hello. Let me know the chat's working. I will be monitoring on different platforms. Let me get my chat turned on as well. There it is. No messages yet. So yeah, if you're just joining, say hello. Let me know it's working. I am watching on Instagram because Instagram chat. Hey, Infected FPS, good to see you. Instagram chat and TikTok chat are separate. Unfortunately, I can stream there, but the chat's not connected. And then LinkedIn, I like to double check because LinkedIn's important to me, but who knows if it's ever actually working, right? I can't even join my own event on LinkedIn. Come on, let me in. Cool. Yeah, so now I can join. There we go. So I'll be watching on LinkedIn for chat, Instagram. Burhan, nice to see you. Mitch Lewis, nice to see you as well. Okay, it looks like Facebook's working, LinkedIn's working. It's working. It's all working. Langa on Instagram. Hello, watching from Instagram. Awesome stuff. Thanks for letting me know, folks. I appreciate it. So yeah, welcome. This is an AMA. I do these every Monday night. It is 7 p.m. PST for me here. Just a minute or so after. And I will be doing like trying to answer whatever questions you got. Try to do that, of course. It's the usual. So put them in the chat as they come up. It doesn't matter to me if they're like off topic from today's subject. So if it's related to software engineering in some way, I'm happy to chat through that. So if it's, you know, thoughts on career progression, getting into the industry, if you want to talk .NET and C# stuff, that's cool too. So just let me know in the chat. But yeah, this, like, I think last week was a little atypical for me. And usually what I do is I talk about the last newsletter article that I put together. So I will be doing that this time. Give me 1 sec. I just want to make sure I can pull up the link to that. Again, I don't expect, like, newsletters aren't for everyone, so this isn't me trying to, like, get you to subscribe to it. In fact, if you're going to subscribe and not read it, it's not really, it's not valuable. So let me get the link to it if you want to check it out. If you do want to subscribe, this will let you know essentially what I'll be talking about almost all the time on this stream slot. The other thing I'll mention is that the streams that I've been trying to do Tuesday mornings, so those ones are at 7 a.m., I do live coding streams at that time slot. The past few weeks, except when I was on vacation, I was trying to migrate my blog to Blazor, which is super cool. I had Steven Giesel joining. He's the author of the open source Blazor blog engine that I intended to use. And I basically was demoing like how I'm going to be migrating all my WordPress stuff over to that. So that was a fun experience. You know, it was really good to have his input and stuff. So very thankful for that. And then this past weekend, I kind of just like said, screw it. I'm going to try to go the rest of the way because I'm so sick of my blog being down. So my site is up again. It is on Blazor. There's still a couple of kinks to sort out. So for example, I've been noticing that my Signal R connection is dropping. Seems suspicious, but I think it has to do with caching. So, gotta look into that. And then the way that I was migrating blog posts, if you watch those live streams, I was demonstrating how I was using regular expressions just to be, you know, quick and dirty, I guess, to look for different things that weren't compatible. I've noticed that some of the regular expressions were a little bit too greedy. And what I mean by that, if you're not familiar with the concepts, is that I can match on patterns, but there are pieces of text that repeat, and it was being too greedy and trying to capture more than it should. So there's a couple of blog articles that migrated, and it like blew away the whole center of the blog article. Oops. the good news is that I was taking snapshots of different articles, their conversions, so I can rerun the whole migration, which is super cool, and not worry about essentially even any downtime. So just a heads up, the site's live, and I'll put together some videos that are a little bit more polished. Like the live streams were fun, but I want to talk about like, hey, if you want to get a Blazor blog set up, like here's what to do. I'll probably even show some of the Azure stuff where I'm hosting now. And one of the last things on my list is that I need to get like Google Analytics hooked up. And there's supposed to be like a couple of lines to add and it all just works. But when I do it, the whole site just like doesn't work. So I got to go back to the drawing board on that one. But anyway, that's Tuesday mornings. I'll probably finish up the migration chat tomorrow morning. And then what I'm going to try to do is on those streams demonstrate writing code with AI. And we're going to be talking about AI and junior software developers in this chat. So I thought I was talking with my video editor because the video that I put out on this, which is also kind of out of order for me, let me get the video pulled up and you can check it out if you're interested. Grab that link. I'll put it into the chat. If you're on a different platform, like if you're on LinkedIn, if you just go to my YouTube channel, which is just, let me type that in as well. It's just at DevLeader. So YouTube, oh, my keyboard's, the USB buffer is all backed up on on my keyboard and from the USB hub. So it's like, trying to queue up all of these keystrokes and then they're all getting neglected and then it just blasts away like it's a big pain in the butt. So if you go to, it needs an S there, one sec, sorry, I'm falling apart. Thanks, keyboard. That's the YouTube channel if that's not where you came from, but if you watch the most recent video, that's essentially what I'm going to be talking about today. And when I was talking with my editor, because this one performed pretty well, I've been going through a bit of a rut. So this one performed pretty well. And we were talking about like, it might be a pretty interesting idea to talk more about AI development. And I could demonstrate like, let's go build something. And I'm just going to use like ChatGPT and talk to it and see what we can build. So I'll be trying to do that on the Tuesday streams going forward. I think it'll be pretty fun. Okay, and I see a question from Infected FPS before I dive into the topic today. So got one that's probably off topic before you get into your usual stuff. Got any advice for writing more technical blogs? Yeah, wanting to finally make use of a domain I bought, but no clue what to even start with. Yeah, so it depends how like serious you want to get with this stuff, right? So if you just want to be casual about it, and if you don't have a reason to not be casual, I would say just stick to being casual. Otherwise, if you're trying to be more serious, I would say like one of the biggest things is find a way to be consistent. And when I say the word consistent, I don't mean like every week at exactly this time you must publish your blog, or every day you must publish a blog at this time. Like not that kind of consistency, but I mean like committing yourself to publishing blog posts. I think that's important if you're trying to be serious about it. Otherwise, what happens is like you'll find that it starts to become work. And then if you're not putting some framework in place for consistency, it's easy to be like, like I don't want to do it. I'm busy. Like you need to prioritize it. So that's one thing I would mention based on how serious you want to be, is find a way to be consistent. I'll talk a little bit more about that after. In terms of like what to write about and that kind of stuff. So I would just recommend, like, if you have a bunch of stuff that's top of mind where you're like, I think this would be helpful. First of all, I would say like one of the things I hear people talk to me about is they're like, I don't want to do it because I feel like other people have already done it. There's a million C# tutorials. There's a million articles on whatever, and they're not wrong. But what there isn't is there's not a million articles written by you. So you will be different. And that doesn't, when I say you'll be different, I don't mean you're going to publish an article and it's going to get 10 trillion views and you'll, become a trillionaire or something. I just mean you will be producing content, even if it's on the same topic, you will present it in a way that other people have not done. And there's power in that. And I think a lot of people miss that. Like when I'm talking to all of you and I'm putting out YouTube videos and articles and stuff, I'm not saying things that other people can't say or have not said, right? Like I'm not special that way. So, I'm just here sharing stuff, right? These are my experiences, these are my perspectives and opinions. And I would say like you can do the same thing. I told if you're a .NET developer, you'll know who these people are. If you're not, then I'll elaborate a little further. But so Nick Chapsis is one of the biggest like C# and .NET creators like on YouTube, and Milan Jovanovic is also another one who's a very big creator. And before I started making YouTube videos, I know the question was about blog articles, but before I started making YouTube videos, I remember I started blogging in 2013 and gave up. And one of the catalysts for me getting back into it and saying I'm going to take this seriously was I was watching their videos going like, these guys have been successful, and this is going to sound like it's like an insult, and I don't mean it this way, and I've told this to them directly, but I was like, look what these guys are doing. I think I can do that. And that's not to discredit like how good they are at it, or their skill level, their video production, anything like that. What I meant by that was like they're being consistent. I'm sure if I went and watched their first videos, they wouldn't be good. I'm sure they would tell you that. But I said, I'm going to be consistent. And like, yes, they've talked about the same topics that I've talked about, other people have talked about, but they are unique and I am unique. So you're going to get a different perspective. So, Infected FPS, if you want to start getting into blogging, I would say number one, don't be afraid if other people have talked about the same topics. You are unique, so you have that going for you. If you have a bunch of ideas, start with those. I would try to space them out. Like, don't try to just write like 50 articles in 1 week and then feel like crap after when you're like, I got nothing to write about. If they come to you, write them, schedule them, great. And then what I like to do, and I haven't done it recently because I've been working on brand goals so much and I don't have time to write blogs. I do this for YouTube videos. That when I'm building stuff and I get stuck, I go, and I search on YouTube and I go, interesting. Like, I don't see a good tutorial for this. I'm going to write it. Or in this case, I'm going to make a video on it. So when I was blogging more, I would do that where it's like, here's a problem. I would search online, pull resources together and be like, I don't want the next person who might be me in the future to have to go do that again. Let me write a blog article. Let me make a YouTube video along with it because people, get value in different ways. And then I'll put it all together. So yeah, my recommendation if you're stuck with like, what should I write about is like write about the problems you're solving. Another thing that I'll add in before continuing on here, so hopefully this is helpful, is like, what's a good way to put this? You talk about solving the problems, or sorry, making videos on problems you're solving. I lost my train of thought. It's going to come back to me though. Sorry. It's gone. It's completely out of there. Guess it's been a long day. But yeah, I would highly recommend getting into it if you haven't done it before. It's a lot of fun, but just understand too, like, you might publish a bunch and like no one will read them, and that's okay. I've published some and I'm sure they got very few views, and I've gone online later to go search for a tutorial and I'm like, thankfully I wrote that because now I can help myself. So yeah, the other idea, like the thing I wanted to bring up was around like coming up with ideas, but it's gone forever. I'm sure like 45 minutes into this conversation it'll come back though. But Infected FPS, I hope that helps. Yeah, let me know if you start. It's a fun journey to be on. Cool. Okay, folks, let's talk about today's topic. Again, if you're just joining because I see more people are on, put questions in the chat if you want me to answer them. I'll pivot to talk about those. But the topic that I want to get into, yeah, right, / make videos on the problems you're solving. That's what I forgot what was after that though. Cool. So the topic again is going to be about junior developers using AI. And this basically was like content created from a Reddit thread. I'm not going to pull up the Reddit thread. It's not really worth it because I can just summarize it for us. But essentially there was a developer posting to experienced devs on Reddit. And I think this is actually like a pretty common perspective. which is interesting, right? So the thing that they were bringing to their thread was like, hey, folks, I'm an engineer at some place, a software engineer, and there's a junior developer that's joined. And they gave an example of trying to pair program with this junior developer. And they were saying it's very frustrating because it seems like the junior developer can't code without the AI tools, right? And this is like some of the limited framing that they provided. So they're like, it seems like they can't code. So brand new developer to the team, they are junior, can't write code unless they're using an LLM. So you can imagine if you're trying to pair program with this person, that anytime they want to go type something, they're like, no, like I'm going to the LLM for it. So it's kind of interesting. A little bit of information, I can't remember if it was added in the original post or a comment later, was that they were describing like they actually were part of hiring this person. And it was, I guess they were, I don't want to say they were misled. Maybe they felt misled, but whatever process they were using for their hiring, like did not seem to catch this if this is actually a problem, which is kind of interesting too. So, and I'm going to try to get into some more general ideas, and it would be really cool if you have thoughts on this in general. So junior developers using AI tools and perhaps becoming over reliant on AI tools. If you have thoughts on this, as I'm blabbing away here, feel free to put that in the chat, and then I can bring them up here and we can discuss them together, because I think it's a really fascinating thing that's going on here. So, I was pretty surprised because I thought that I was going to start scrolling through the comments on this Reddit post and we're going to see a bunch of people just being upset, being like, yeah, I know what you mean. Like all these junior devs, like they suck. They can't code. All they do is use ChatGPT. And I was expecting to just scroll through a sea of these comments. And I was a little bit surprised because that's not what happened. And what a lot of people were saying, like there's a handful that were starting off with this saying like, well, you did say that they're a junior developer and they're new to the company. Like, have you considered that maybe they don't actually know that programming language? Which is kind of interesting, right? Because I can think for myself, like there are programming languages that I have used before. But if you said, Nick, like, because I program in C# all the time, if you said, Nick, I need you to write this program in Python, I would go, like literally, if you asked me to do it right now, I don't know how to declare a variable and I don't know how to declare a function. If someone put Python code in front of me, I could tell you where the variable declaration is and where the function is, but I can't recall the exact syntax. I don't know. So without using an LLM, if we're talking about doing this 10 years ago, I would go to Google and I would just say, Python, how to declare variable. Oh, it's ridiculously simple. Python, how to declare function. Oh, ridiculously simple, right? Like if it was a different programming language, I would do the exact same thing for languages that I've used before. Like I don't program in JavaScript a lot, but I would do the same thing. Like how to declare, how do I make an async function in JavaScript? I don't know. Like I know what it is, but I don't know the syntax. And it's not muscle memory for me because I don't use it all the time. And I use C# all the time, and it's barely muscle memory because as soon as Visual Studio doesn't work and I lose IntelliSense, I feel like I don't have thumbs anymore. So like we become reliant on the tools. It's just that the tools are different. So I thought it was really interesting that a lot of people were calling out, by the way, have you considered this person might not know the programming language? So that was the first one that I thought was kind of interesting. So on LinkedIn chat here, interesting. I assume most of the hiring process for junior dev involves some coding and data algorithms. Yeah, so this is an interesting point, right? You would assume that, and I would as well. And if that was the case, then they must have demonstrated somehow in the interview that they had some ability to, to do algorithms and at least to code things high level. But like the language choice, right? Like, did they just say, hey, do it in any language you want? If they expect their developers to program in some specific language, I don't think they called out what it was, but say we need our developers to program in C++. We need that. Like, if that's a requirement, did you interview for it? Like, I feel like in this case, they did not. So, and it's missing from the original post, because what's challenging is um like, do they actually know if that developer knows the programming language or not? Like, there just isn't enough context. I think a lot of people were suggesting, like, it's very likely that this person just does not know the syntax. So I thought that was one interesting part about this. Um, Another interesting part that this person said in their post, though, was that, and this is like way later on in the comments and stuff, they were saying that they're on a team currently, and that team, there's only that person and one other person that is like a coder, and everyone else just uses AI tools and stuff. So here I am reading this going like, why is this person upset about this junior developer using AI tools if the rest of the team is doing that too? Like, it seems weird to call them out. But anyway, if I flip the script a little bit, if we think about like the expectations that this team has, right? Like, it's not for me to say right or wrong, right? Like, I don't know, and I don't know their process, and I'm not trying to claim right or wrong, but if their process and how their team works is they expect a lot of pair programming, if they do, if they expect that everyone knows the language fluently, right? If they have other requirements around how people are working, then like, why are they not interviewing for it? I think is an interesting thing to ask, right? So instead of being, you can flip the whole thing to say like, forget AI, forget AI entirely. Let's pretend it's 10 years ago and we don't have LLMs to go talk to. Now the scenario is, hey, this junior developer joined. We're trying to pair program, but every time I go to ask them to write a line of code, they jump onto Google and they say how to declare a variable in JavaScript, how to write a function, how to, like, do you see the difference? Like, it's just the tool, right? So if these individuals have constraints around what is required, I think that they need to be more transparent about that during the interview process, or else they're setting themselves up for disappointment this way. So I thought that was kind of a interesting thing to look at. There's one more thing that's kind of escaping my mind that I'll come back to, but I guess my brain is just like not working today, but I apologize for that. So I'm going to jump to more parts specifically in the article. So I don't know. I'm going to catch up on the chat here. So Infected FPS. Thankfully, my company hasn't had much issues with AI reliance with junior devs, at least on my team. I personally noticed an apathy towards AI from both junior and seasoned devs. Instead of using Copilot or ChatGPT to get examples of implementations or best practices, they just wing it and implement things in an incorrect, outdated way. Yeah, so this is like, I'll come back to this because I think it's a really good point. And I do want to talk about it. So the thing that I started mentioning in my article was like, well, I want to frame this up a little bit more. So I'm genuinely not against people using AI tools and heavily relying on them. And I'm not heavily against that because, sorry, I'm not against that heavy usage. I'm struggling today. I'm not against that heavy usage because like these, I don't have enough context on this stuff. Like, this stuff is new. Like, I could imagine if I were trying to become a programmer and I had access to something like this at the time, I would probably be trying to spend tons of time with it and using it. So I'm looking at this being like, it's weird because it's not how I did it, but that doesn't make it wrong. Now, there are some things that I think are kind of risky, and that's where I'm going to come back to Infected FPS's point in the chat. But before I get there, the one thing that I think LLMs do really well, especially for juniors, is that it lets them leapfrog ahead in terms of what they're able to build. So, for example, if I were a junior developer again and I were starting out and I said, I want to start programming something, like, if I was like, I want to go build a web application that can, I don't know, like, it's a Pokemon database and I can go scrolling through the different Pokemon, just making something up. Everyone loves Pokemon, right? So if I wanted to go build that, I'm like, okay, I have to go write it, like do a search online, like what are different programming languages? What are different tech stacks to go use? Like, how do I how do I go start this thing? And then I'm like, okay, well, database, like, or I might not even know what a database is, right? Like, how do I store information? Like, um, it would be pretty daunting. You could do it because that's how we did it, right? You could go piece this stuff together by doing your searches and trying to bring the information in. But now you could literally type to an LLM, like, I would like to make a Pokemon database with a user interface and a web application, and I don't know what programming language and tech stack to use. Could you recommend one and start building this part of the application for me? And it would probably do it, at least at least better than you could on your own, if you were just starting out. So I feel like it gives you this ridiculous advantage for like jumping ahead to getting something. And this is where I want to come back to Infected FPS's point, which is like, that's something. It doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's the best. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that it's something. So on Instagram, where are you from? I am currently from Seattle area. I am from Canada, though. So if I talk kind of funny and I say sorry a lot, that's just because I'm Canadian. So I don't know what that's all about, though. So the idea here is that when you're able to use tools that can really give you like this advanced sort of like big step ahead to getting stuff made, it's very easy to go, cool, like it built the thing. Like it did it. I'm going to take that and I'm going to try running at least. I'm going to press play in my IDE. Okay, and it worked. I see a result. Cool. Okay, Mr. ChatGPT, I want to make sure that I can have something in the user interface to sort the Pokemon, and I want to be able to search by their primary type. I'm just making stuff up about Pokemon, right? Like, but you could go ask ChatGPT to do this, and it's maintaining the context, and then it starts building more of your app for you, and you copy and paste that, you try it out quickly, and it's working. Like, you end up being able to just take the output and not think much about it. So there is a risk here, of course. And as Infected FPS was saying in the chat, right, instead of using Copilot or ChatGPT to get examples of implementations or best practices, they just wing it and implement things in an incorrect, outdated way. So if you're just taking stuff out of the LLM and not thinking about it, and it happens to work, and you're not digging into it more, like, that's where I think it starts to become risky. Now, I will say this, and I've written it, and I will say it, this is recorded, but I'm very curious to see if my nervousness around this is like completely disproven. If LLMs get so good that people can just get away with like essentially just relying on them to output stuff, and then when it doesn't work, they just say, hey, it didn't work, and the LLM goes, no problem, and builds it perfect. Like, I'm curious to see if people can be genuinely like very productive and very effective software engineers like that. I have a hard time believing it personally, but that's because my experience has looked nothing like that. So I am curious about it, though. So how can we start to improve this, right? So if you were a junior software developer and you were coming to me saying, hey, like, I am relying on LLMs a lot, and now I'm getting, like, I've been hearing people kind of make fun of this or challenge it, and like, I want to make sure that I'm set up for success. Like, hey, Nick, what would you recommend? Well, I would say, like, don't stop using the LLM. Like, it's a tool. You have a more powerful tool, an LLM, than I ever had, because it was just searching on the internet, Stack Overflow and Code Project. And if it wasn't there, then you're coming up with it for the first time in the universe, at least in a documented way, right? So you have these powerhouse tools at your fingertips. I would say, like, leverage them. But the thing personally that I feel like gets missed in these scenarios is that you're using these tools to produce. And when I talk historically, when I talk about building software to like get better at building software, one of the things that you need to experience, in my opinion, to learn effectively is like you need to get stuck and you need to fail at things. Like you need to be in that state where you're like, this isn't working. I don't know what to do. Try things out. And then you find something that works and that enables you to go to the next step. And I'm not sure if people are getting enough of that when they're using LLMs. And like even from my own experience, I use ChatGPT a lot for writing SQL queries now. And sometimes the query will get, and I know how to write SQL queries. It's just a convenience thing for me. So sometimes, it's writing a query for me and I'm like, man, that's a pretty gnarly query. And then I go run it and I'm like, okay, it's working. Awesome. And then I find like a bug or like something I need changed in it. And it's like no fault of the LLM. I never clarified that requirement. And then I ask it to like make an improvement or do a change. And now there's still a bug in it. And then I get into this habit of like, hey, ChatGPT, still a bug. Tries again. Hey, ChatGPT, there's still a bug. But what's happening is I'm not actually learning. Like I'm not trying to figure out the problem. I'm strictly using a tool for it. If you watched my live stream that I did last week in the morning for programming, when I was converting pieces of my WordPress blog, I was doing this. I was writing regular expressions, and regular expressions are the worst, and they're absolutely gnarly. And ChatGPT does a pretty good job of writing regular expressions. But you need to give it context. If you're not telling it enough about the scenario you're trying to work with, like it doesn't know, right? Like, so it's going to give you something. And what was happening for me was I was talking to ChatGPT about this. It would give me the regular expression. I'd run it, wasn't matching. And I'm looking at this regex like, I can't edit this thing. It's too nasty. So, hey, ChatGPT still doesn't work. And you just get into this pattern of not actually learning. So the recommendation I would have to junior devs that are kind of maybe building a little bit what I would call too much of a reliance is like, number one, take the opportunity to ask ChatGPT or whatever tool you're using to explain things to you. I found ChatGPT will give you some type of like, here's why at the end, but like ask it more questions. Like, why did you go do that? Why this way? If you know of other ways, ask it why not that other way. This is where like I'm not good at prompting. Like I'm not good at getting effective answers out of it, but I could think about the topics that I would want to ask. Like, hey, thanks, this query worked, but like, is it performant? Like, could we make it faster? Like, what are we optimizing for with this query? I've had code that I've had ChatGPT output and it did like multiple SQL queries. And I said, hey, like, I want to do one round trip with this. I don't want to make 3 separate queries to go to the server. Like, could we do this in one? So there's things that I know to ask it. And that only comes with experience, right? So Infected FPS says, after a few iterations, the memory of the AI starts working against it. Yeah, so you start getting into this loop of, there's a bug, can you fix it? Yeah, exactly. And then sometimes it fixes the bug and then it creates another one. Like it undoes what it fixed earlier and you're like, why can't I just program for myself? So it's you have to understand the tools. And this is another thing, just to kind of jump back a little bit. I'm very curious if the people that like grew up programming on LLMs are so good at prompting that they know how to dodge this kind of stuff. Like I am certainly not good at prompting. I'm simply not. I need to do more of it. I need to understand it more. That's certainly like something I don't do well. But for someone else who is really good at talking to an LLM, like maybe they're not a great software developer without it, but they know how to prompt effectively, I think that could be a really interesting like advantage in terms of like becoming a better and better software developer. So I am very curious about that. So advice to juniors, I would say, like, I know I'm bouncing around a lot, but ask it questions, right? Ask to clarify things. If you have time, like I know if you're at work, maybe Uh, some situations you're like, I don't have all day to keep asking this thing like questions and stuff, but ask it for variations. Ask it to explain like why this way versus another. Like take the time to go learn from it instead of just copy pasting the output. So that's one thing. Um, I think something else I would recommend is practice debugging with it because that's very helpful. So when it's not working, back to this like there's a bug, can you fix it? Like go through the steps yourself. Like when it's not working and you're like, I don't even know what ChatGPT told me to write here. Like I don't understand any of it. Like go run the code and step through it. Like this is I think one of the best ways to learn is if you're not the one actually just like outputting the information like the code, like debug it, step through it, debug it, understand what it's actually doing, because that's going to be another skill that when you're working with ChatGPT or even without it, like the debugging skills are huge and probably very undervalued until you're building a lot of software and you're realizing I spend a lot of time debugging stuff, right? So you can use LLMs for that purpose. Um, what else? I would say not just not just to question it. Oh, one sec. So one thing I'm not sure can really be gained with heavy reliance on AI is knowing what you don't know to be able to ask. Yeah. So yeah, let me jump to this. I think this is a good point. So this is the where I wonder what kind of a vicious cycle we create, right? So for example, I've been writing software for a long time now, and I'm not perfect like no one is. And if I had to go debug something with ChatGPT or I had to ask it to build something, like I have lived experiences where I could go question it, I could challenge it, I could, if it's not working, I could give it hints like, hey, like I saw you output this code, like this is clearly not going to work, and I can identify that stuff. If I was building an app and I was asking ChatGPT to build part of it, I could say like, okay, I know this thing is going to put together some sort of slop for me to use, but hey, like I need to optimize for low latency. I need to minimize the number of round trips here. I need to, like, whatever it happens to be, I can add that extra detail in. So the experiences that we have, we can feed back in to the prompt, right? So I think if you've been using LLMs for a little bit, you know this already, that the more context that you can add that's tailored for what you're doing, the more specific context you can add, the better the result's going to be. So again, if you're a junior, and no fault of yours, if you don't have a ton of experience yet, you're probably not going to know a bunch of different things that you should be adding for context. And like, how do you just get that? So I think it requires like a bunch of lived experiences. If there are ways to shortcut that, super cool. I would love to see more of that happening because, like I said, I'm genuinely interested in seeing how this progresses. It's not how I approach software development, so would be really interested to see. But I guess that's like probably the next like third piece of advice, right? So is really to kind of use it as an effective feedback loop. So as you are learning things as a junior, right, you're seeing things that are working. You're seeing like, hey, if I prompt ChatGPT and it makes something for me, I've seen this pattern where like it's sometimes neglecting, it's not writing code that's testable by our standards where we work. It's just not doing that. So I find it's writing stuff and then I have to rewrite it and like I'm wasting time. Like, okay, well, what could you do differently, right? Like you're probably better at prompting than I am, but context, right? What's the context? Hey, ChatGPT, um, I noted, or I don't even know how you talk to it. It depends on your relationship with the ChatGPT, but you might say like, we want to avoid, I'm just making this up, by the way, like we want to avoid static references to methods because that way I'll be able to mock out the third party service that I want to be able to test with, right? You're going, this needs to be testable. This is a thing that comes up. It's really important. We need testability based on how we test. We want to mock out third party services. If you're latching on to that, saying that's not how you test, you're missing the point. It's okay. But you want to give it the context, right? If you're writing performance critical code and you're prompting ChatGPT and it's spitting out stuff that seems to work, and you're like, yeah, but it's like 15 levels of nested for loops, like that can't possibly be efficient. Like, tell it that. Hey, ChatGPT, this is performance critical code. We want to reduce memory allocations. We want to, like, blah, blah, blah. And I need you to build this. Like, giving it that context. But that's going to take you repeating things, messing up, and learning. So I guess, like, it's probably implicit. I should have said this one is number 3, but, like, don't just blindly take the code. Like, it's not enough to go copy paste the code, maybe not even run it once before you keep going. Like, hey, look, it looks like it's going to compile. There's no errors. Not good enough. Like, try it out. Try breaking it. Try writing the tests if they're not there. Like, try to do some of the work with it so that you understand what it's giving you. I think it's critical. And we kind of already said it in chat, right? But it's too easy. It's too easy to not do that because it's so easy now for us to just go to the next step. Hey, go build the next feature, copy paste. But for those of us that have been around before LLMs, like, we would do the same thing with, like, Stack Overflow, right? Like, this person says it's the answer, copy paste that thing, let's go, rock and roll. And then you go run it and you're like, oh, it doesn't really work. And then, okay, well, what was the next most upvoted answer? Like, let me go try that, and, like, copy paste. And you're like, yeah, it's going to work. But you're not, like, you're barely testing it. It's, like, just enough to, like, get you past the next level. We've all done this kind of stuff before without AI. It's just that it's way easier. It's just that it's way easier to go type a chat message in and get a response from a robot on the next step to go take. And it sounds confident too, right? So it's way more appealing just to go say, well, I mean, this LLM told me so, like, and it rationalized it at the end, like, so I better go use it, versus you, like, scouring Stack Overflow and different random articles being like, man, I don't even know what I'm doing, but someone says this works, I'm just going to try it. Like, we want to, feels like ChatGPT is a more trustable source just because it's very confident in its output. So I don't think that it's wrong to use these things heavily, but I guess, I don't know if, like, fear is, like, too strong of a word. I'm nervous. I have anxiety around it that having such a reliance without questioning things, without trying to learn, I think that's where I see, like, potential challenges, like, in especially long term, because I don't have, like, a I don't have a crystal ball. I know that might be shocking to some people, but no crystal ball here. And if you were to take two developers side by side, let's pretend they're equal in every way possible, and one of them just, like, literally only uses an LLM to go build software, and the other one's like, I'm gonna go use the Stack Overflow, do it the old school way. I'd be curious to know, like what I might expect happens, and total speculation here, right? It's obviously a very contrived hypothetical situation, but bear with me. Does the developer who's using the LLM, like, basically get way further ahead sooner because they can just have, like, entire bits of code that are put together with low effort, so they have something working way sooner? They can seemingly make more seemingly I said seemingly, I can't believe that. They can seemingly make more progress on their development effort because they can get more done on the surface. But if we look at the other developer, do they have a slower start, but, like, their foundation is being built up more? Maybe it's slower to get started, but, like, they end up like over time, they become more and more effective until the point where they're like, okay, like, yeah, you can have an LLM spit out code maybe faster than I can type it, but like, but you're spending so much time messing around with that and I'm able to like exceed you. Like, I don't know if that's going to happen. That's my assumption, but I have literally no evidence. It's just like a gut feel. And I'm actually hopeful that's not how it works. I'm actually hopeful that the person who is using the LLM as a tool, like maybe they have this period of learning that's kind of in the middle where they're like, man, like I'm having a rough time because I keep getting caught on this stuff. But like, I am really good at prompting. I keep running into these issues. I wonder if I can like supercharge my learning by leveraging the LLM. Like that's what I'm hopeful for, and I would love to see it. Um, like I have no it doesn't matter which way it goes to me. Like it's too late for me, I guess. But I'm really curious to see if we have this like new generation of software developers that is heavily reliant on LLMs and that actually works in their favor long term. Question in chat from YouTube. I've worked on WPF, XAML, C# for 8 years. What should I be focusing on next? Great question. The only way to answer that is like, what do you want to be doing? I don't have enough context to answer this from like a career perspective. So the more that you want to add, the better. To give you an example though, like literally, so you said worked on WPF, XAML, C# for 8 years. That's literally what I did before Microsoft. Literally for 8 years, worked in WinForms over to WPF and XAML, all in C# for 8 years, shipping desktop applications. So exact same boat as you, regard to technology. So I think you need to ask yourself, what do you want to be doing next? Because that's hard for me to say. Like, are you planning to switch jobs? If so, where do you want to go? Are you planning just to move teams? Is it just for self-learning? Like, yeah, there's a million different things I could say, and it's probably not helpful without knowing more context. So, Arky on YouTube, if you want to add more context, the more context you add, I feel like the more effectively I can try to answer for you. So, I'm not trying to be an ass and like give you a crappy answer. I would like to give you a better answer, but I do need more details to do that effectively. Okay, let me scroll through because I think that's probably most of. Oh, I wanted to talk about how I'm using AI tools, and I've kind of already done this. I kind of already hinted a little bit, but definitely using AI tools for SQL queries. So one thing that, like from my experience, what I'm finding works really well is like I know how to write SQL queries. I am certainly not like an expert in SQL. Like I wouldn't switch jobs and try to take a role that was like SQL is the only thing I'm doing. That wouldn't feel good. Can I write SQL queries? Yes. Can I read them? Yes. When they start to get overly complicated, my brain starts to melt, and that's just how it is. So, but I find if I'm using ChatGPT for help on these things, then it gets me most of the way, and I'm unable to keep up with it once the queries become overly complicated because I don't know what to prompt it with next. So we talked about this already in the chat, right? Like this, hey, it's broken. Can you fix it? Like I can't give it more detail. I can say like, here's the output. It's not what I'm expecting. Like go fix it. But even then, if I can't hint like, hey, I noticed like you're doing an order by, or you're in this join, you're missing another ID. Like if I can't give it that, then I'm not adding value into this feedback loop. So I've been using it a lot for SQL, but it starts to fall down when the queries get really complicated. Otherwise, though, I've done things like I already mentioned that reducing the number of round trips. So literally had this situation. It was kind of funny. So I'll talk about Brand Ghost for a moment at least. So Brand Ghost is this this platform I'm building for all my content creation. And for other people to use too. But so if you see the content I put out online, basically, if you see it posted on social media, I can almost guarantee that I use Brand Ghost to post it. I very rarely post, unless it's a comment, I very rarely post on social media. So In Brand Ghost, there's a lot of SQL. There's data in a SQL database, and I was working on this feature for a calendar view, and I was working with one of the engineers. He works on the front end stuff, and I recall that we were going to have this funny issue because we didn't have like a bulk API. So, hey, like we want to go populate the calendar, but like I don't have a bulk API. If you want one thing, I can give you one thing. If you want a bunch, right now that's going to be a bunch of queries. And we said, you know what? Like, it's not a big deal. Like, low load right now. Like, we'll revisit this to optimize it. Not a big deal. It's all good. Spoiler alert, it was a big deal. So we had basically we were firing like on every page load, we were firing like 15 requests to the server. So front end to the back end, 15 requests. And then what I didn't realize is that there was like basically 5 SQL queries per request that we're running. So it was more like 45 SQL queries like in an instant. So and there's no caching or anything. So it was just like, it got so wild that, and there's another thing layered into here, that we have automatic scaling that's from Azure. It resets every time when we build because Aspire resets it. It's a whole other conversation. I can't comprehend why that's a default thing. But anyway, if we have 10 concurrent web requests, the automatic scaling, new instance comes up. So here's what's happening. We get a bunch of instances spinning up. Those instances are designed to be monolithic. They will work now, at least, in parallel with each other. But there's no benefit. There's zero benefit when there's multiple running at the same time, except for like redundancy if one of them stops working, but not a good reason. So what was happening with this calendar refresh was multiple instances were spinning up because we were hitting this limit on the number of concurrent HTTP requests. Those instances go run scheduling logic or like do queries. So they're running stuff in the background now. And then we layer on the fact that it's doing 45 SQL queries at once. And let me tell you, when I was looking in Azure and looking at the database graph, because there's a couple of us like testing it late at night, going like, why is the server so slow? Like, are you noticing this? Like, is something broken? And we're looking at these queries and it was like, oh my God, like something's wrong. And when I went looking at it, I was like, oh, like, duh, I'm doing so many of these queries individually. But then I was reading it and I'm like, I know why this happened. The way that the data is structured, I don't have like, I don't know a good way to explain it. I have like a good way to like flatten the data into a data structure. So I said, okay, like I have 3 working queries here. Hey, ChatGPT, like here's C# code. It's a MySQL database. I'm using Dapper. I like using Dapper over Entity Framework Core. So that's what I got going on. I said, here's the C# code with the 3 queries. I said, I want you to make this 1 query. And I want you to do 1 round trip to get this data because I need to minimize round trips for performance. And then it did it. And it showed me something in Dapper that I'd never even considered before. And I was like, oh, like, damn, I actually have a new pattern that I can use here, because I know in the code there's a handful of other spots where I'm doing crappy stuff like that too. So anyway, it was a really cool opportunity for me to learn. So I definitely use ChatGPT for SQL. Regular expressions is another one. Again, I can write regular expressions from hand. I have the power, but no one likes doing it. ChatGPT is very good at doing it, I found. If you give it examples, you can say, here's something to match on. Here's what I expect. Write it. And then if you have other examples, you can say, by the way, like you also need to support this. And it will generally do a pretty good job. I would say more often than not, when I'm finding ChatGPT is messing up my regular expressions, it's because I'm doing something different than what it's saying. Like it's using the single line matching and I'm forgetting to put that in. Like dumb stuff like that. So it's actually quite good, which is great. But I have the benefit that I understand. Look, again, not like expert level regex mastery here, but I understand how regular expressions work. Um, for example, building out my blog migrator to go from WordPress to Blazor, was writing regular expressions. I knew it was going to happen, and I hadn't had an example yet, but I knew there was going to be a situation where it was greedily matching. So when I ran into the issue, all that I said to ChatGPT was, here's the query, here's some data, and it's greedily matching on this. Make it not do that. No problem. Does it perfectly. So I've been using it for things, pardon me, been using it for things that I already have experience doing. And I think for me, that's a good fit. Now, there's probably a bunch of learning that I could be doing where I lean into ChatGPT more. So for example, and I'm going to be trying this on stream, by the way, not tonight, but I will be doing it, where I'm going to take something like, so my blog is now in Blazor. Blazor does support JavaScript in there as well. I suck at anything that's like front end at all. And I think it's going to be a really cool opportunity to say like, hey, ChatGPT, I got this thing. Help me make it better and see what it does. So that will be me trying out, like, if I were a complete noob at this, how would I do it? I do have the advantage that I've been building software for a long time, so there's probably other things I'll think to ask, but yeah, that's a way that I'm considering at least. But for me, it's been primarily, if I know how to do it and I don't want to spend time doing it, ChatGPT. Hey, ChatGPT, I have this function. I want you to remove all the link methods, and I want you to build up collections in an optimal way because it's a fixed size set of data. We know what's going on. Go do it. Or the opposite. Hey, ChatGPT, I don't want to have materialized collections. I would love if you can change this method to not build up the collection, but I want to stream it back with iterators. Do it. I know how to do that. I don't want to spend the time doing it though. So it can be really nice to have the LLM do it. And then it's something, because I understand it, I can spot check it and go, yeah, that's right. And sometimes there's little things where I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that. Or other things where I'm like, that's a bug and I got to fix it. But I think you get the idea. So Arky is on Twitch now. So I look at job portals and all I see is ASP.NET now. I'm trying to learn ASP.NET. I'm confused which part of ASP.NET I should focus on. And should I also learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? So depends. Thanks for sending that on Twitch. I appreciate it. I don't know if there's just like crappy experience for people on YouTube. I see a couple other messages coming through, so maybe it's just it's a bug. It's now a feature. There you go. Yeah, so I don't know if there's other challenges at YouTube, so I apologize for your experience there. But yeah, I would say like a lot of the world is doing like web tech. There are a lot of front end opportunities, I guess. This is why you'll also see a lot of people getting into front end. So HTML, CSS, JavaScript, I'll put it this way. I'm not saying this is good advice, by the way. I'm just going to tell you because it's true. I barely know JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. Barely. Like, can I read HTML? Yes. Do I know what a div is? Yes. If I had to look at JavaScript, could I read it? Yes. I don't like reading it, but I could read it. And CSS is like, I couldn't do anything in CSS right now if you asked me to. Not a single thing. But if you put CSS in front of me, could I maybe figure out what it's doing? Like, yep, probably. So I'm telling you that not because I'm advising that you also just don't learn it and don't do anything. I'm telling you that because there's going to be all sorts of things in your career that like you can't focus on everything. And for me, I've been able to get to where I am today, and I've never focused on those things. Like almost ever. I've spent more time in digital forensics parsing. I shouldn't use parsing. People don't like that. Sort of recovering fragments of HTML. So from like a forensic perspective, there's HTML fragments in RAM that's on in your page file, and we're able to go step through that Oh man, my TikTok disconnected. Give me one sec. We're going live again. I don't know why TikTok's so dumb for this. They keep saying like they're like, "Oh, you're inactive," but I think it's because they're looking for a camera, but I'm using like OBS like over top of it, so it thinks that I'm not here. So anyway, like I've spent more time like recovering deleted HTML than I have like writing HTML. So um, I've also spent like basically zero part of my career or even in my hobby experience, very, very little doing front end work. So I am hoping that with my blog being migrated over to Blazor from WordPress, that I will be able to, have more time to go work on that stuff. So I have to catch up there. Yes, but there's going to be a lot of ASP.NET Core. To give you an example, when I ask my audience on YouTube and other platforms that are .NET developers, and I say, "What do you build? What do you want me to focus on?" Overwhelmingly ASP.NET Core, overwhelmingly. So I think there's a lot of focus there for people. Um, I know you're saying I'm confused which part of ASP.NET I should focus on. Um, I don't know if there's a part specifically. Like I would say, just go build some stuff, right? Um, like I know it sounds like I was joking. If you were on the stream earlier, I was talking about building like a Pokemon database. Like go build something. Like it doesn't. I think people get caught up on like they got to build something that's like important, but like you don't. Go build literally anything and try it out, get stuck, right? Connect to a database, add auth in, see how rate limiting works, like check out middleware, like basically just try building stuff and adding features into it. You're gonna have a working web API and you need to version it. Like, what are you gonna do? You want to keep your server up and not break compatibility, so you add a new route. Like, can you change your payload so that it like you can fit more things onto it? Like, whole bunch of different stuff that you can go look at. But front end, like, I'm using Blazor now. Not for Brand Ghost. We have a Next.js front end. Like, we're not even using .NET for the front end. And that's because the other developers working on Brand Ghost are more familiar with like JavaScript, TypeScript for the front end stuff, and they can work fast in it. There's tons of support. Are they .NET developers? Yes, but from a front end perspective, they're just more familiar with that. I am so far away from like being effective in the front end with those things that I can take something like Blazor, knowing that it's in C sharp, and it has like I know that it's like HTML obviously, but there's some of the structure reminds me of XAML, where I can literally add in components and stuff, and like that's enough familiarity with that kind of tooling for me that even though it might not be the best supported or whatever you want to argue against it, I can be like wildly more productive than otherwise, just because like it's a language I'm familiar with. I've spent over a decade working with it. It just works for me. Um, yeah, so yeah, I'm planning to rebuild my current company's website and APIs from scratch in ASP. Yeah, there you go, right? Um, there's gonna be like you're gonna learn a lot along the way. So um, the if you found when you were building stuff in WPF and XAML, and you found like most of your time was spent primarily just like I don't know, like positioning stuff in or like in the UI and like making sure things like scale and size properly. Like that's going to align obviously a lot more with like front end development. And sorry, I'm not saying that to like minimize it. I just mean like literally you're spending time even though it's like a desktop app, like that's the front end that you're seeing. If you were spending more time like in like the back end of your application, like accessing data, like reading, writing files, connecting to other services, like this is probably going to feel more like back end development for ASP.NET Core. It's just that the framework that you're building on is different. One is going to be like a UI render loop that's mostly hidden from you in WPF, right? But that's what it is. It's just a UI render loop, and you get XAML. And with ASP.NET Core, you have a web server that's going to have middleware and things like that. So Everything else is still going to be C sharp though. So if you're comfortable with C sharp, it's just going to be learning these other concepts. So I think you'll be fine. Um, you know, to give you context, I have not been working in ASP.NET Core for many, many years. When I say like I spent my time at that forensics company for 8 years building desktop applications, like that's literally it. It used to be a joke. Like it used to be a joke that like wasn't actually funny because it was true, but I would avoid anything in the front end. I don't like front end tech. I just don't enjoy it. So I would actively avoid it. Now, in hindsight, that was pretty dumb of me to do. I think it seemed kind of funny, but like in hindsight, who is that hurting? Just me, right? So yeah, I had to switch to ASP.NET Core because I wanted to start building stuff outside of work. What did I build? I was building something with a buddy. I don't know if this was my first ASP.NET Core app. I was making, it's going to sound funny. I think this is the first one that I made, but maybe not. It was something called Hangry. And you can totally steal this idea because we stopped because we saw other people building it. I've never heard about it again, but it was basically Tinder, but for restaurants, if that makes sense. So to explain, you would go on this app if you and your friend or like you and your partner were like, we want to eat somewhere, but we don't know what to eat because this happens all the time. The idea was that you would both swipe through a set of restaurants and then whatever matched. So you'd both have to pick a restaurant. And it's nice because you could do it on your own. You don't show the other person. You're swiping through the things that you would be willing to eat. And then they do it too. And then it gives you a match and says, great, you're getting tacos tonight from this place. I thought it was pretty cool. So we built this thing, and that was my first sort of, I think it was my first example in ASP.NET Core that was something that I like had running in the cloud and stuff. So I could do it. You can do it for sure. As a C sharp developer, learning new tech with C sharp is not that difficult. Exactly. Exactly. So I think you'll be fine. But like I said, in terms of what areas to focus on, I don't know if I can necessarily say, but if you have something like a goal of rebuilding the company's APIs and stuff, like get ASP.NET Core set up, get it running, and start with one part of the API surface area, get that working, play around with it, understand how auth works, rate limiting, blah, blah, blah. Try not to go do all of it at once and then go, oh crap, like now I have to go figure out how all these things are going to work across all the routes that we have to build. Like try to build it out in pieces. I think you'll do great. So hopefully that's helpful, Arky. Yeah, I think on the LLM stuff, I think I was basically done, by the way. So just a heads up. So just to check my final thoughts from the article, I was saying like, I think, using AI tools if you're a junior developer is totally fine by me personally. I'm not against that. I think that it's a tool. I think like any tool, if it's helping you, like use it. If it's not, like understand why it's not, because then it's not really something you should be using. But I do think that it's important. It's not specific to LLMs. I think it's for anything. If you're getting answers to things, like I think you want to take the time to question what you're getting. You want to challenge what you're getting and understand it. Because if you're not doing those things, it's the same. This is how I see it. It's the same as me going to build something and saying, I don't know how to build this. Turning to a buddy and going, hey, Johnny, can you build this for me? And Johnny's like, obviously I can build that, Nick. Johnny builds it for me. I go, thanks, Johnny. And then I go, okay, what's the next thing I have to build? We want to do something else with the Pokemon in our application. Okay. And I go, yeah, I don't know how to do that. Hey, Johnny, can you build this thing for the Pokemon in our app? And Johnny's like, obviously, Nick, I can build that. I can build anything. So you end up just like outsourcing any effort and then you never learn. So the whole point is like, if Johnny were like, hey, I can go build that for you, maybe I would say, hey, Johnny, instead, could you walk me through what you plan to build and I will go build it? Or even if Johnny did build it for you, you could say, Johnny, thanks so much. Can you tell me why you did it this way? Can you tell me how this works? Like, go learn from the person. It's a huge opportunity that you'd be missing if you weren't doing it. So that's what I would recommend to juniors. And I guess really anyone who's trying to dabble with LLMs. But I think that's it, folks. This will be just a last chance if you have questions and stuff before I sign off. I like giving people the opportunity to jump in. Otherwise, I do this thing where I have to advertise a little bit. So I apologize, but I hope you're okay with that. But noticing I post places all over the internet, and there's some people that are like very mad at me when something has a cost. They're like, how dare you? how how dare you charge money for something? And I'm like, look, man, like, you know how much time I spend like putting out free content? Like, give me a break. So anyway, on that note, I do have courses on Dome Train. So Ryan Murphy and I have just launched our second course. This hasn't really been publicized, so shh, it's a secret. But it's on Dome Train, and if you notice at the top, I'll zoom in. Can I get this out of the way? Oh, let's get that out of the way. Okay, so 40% off. It's not a lie. It's real stuff. It's 40% off. So Nick Chapsis runs Dome Train. He is doing a Black Friday sale. So 40% off any course. Doesn't mean just my courses. There's tons of other courses on the site. But the courses that I have, Ryan Murphy and I just released this one, getting promoted as a software engineer. So Ryan Murphy and I are tackling the career section of Dome Train. So we have more courses coming in this space. So hopefully, if you're not a .NET developer and you're like, hey, Nick, like, I like your content and I find like I can learn from you. If you're like, but I'm not a C# programmer and I have no interest, like maybe this stuff is valuable for you for career development. The last programming course I released was Reflection in .NET. That was a lot of fun to make because I really like building stuff with plugins. And I use Reflection all the time for it. And then the last one I'll mention is Nailing the Behavioral Interview. This is the first one that Ryan Murphy and I put out. So it's taking the perspective primarily of big tech behavioral interviews, but of course, these can apply to other jobs as well. So lots of options available. The Black Friday sale, though, is on right now. So like I said, it's 40% off. It's sweet. If I just jump over to the courses page so you can see, like there's lots. There's Git, Blazor, right? Blazor, awesome. Microservices. Amakai did a bunch of design patterns. So these are all way smaller courses, but they'll show you how to use different design patterns. Facade is my personal favorite. So lots and lots of design patterns, which is sweet. He's got like this whole page is just his courses, but there's other stuff on here as well. So definitely check that out. What else? What else I got going on? YouTube channels. So I have my own. Well, I should probably show DevLeader because I don't think that everyone comes from my YouTube channel. So if you're not subscribed already, this is the channel, right? I linked it earlier. It says I'm live right now, but yeah, this is where I put my more polished videos. So these will be tutorials. There'll be conversations like this, but edited heavily, so it's not me just like scrambling for my words and stuff. So if you want more polished content, the DevLeader YouTube channel is where I put my content like that. So primarily .NET development, but otherwise I do have some content like this. Code Commute, I've been trying to share this one a little bit more. I've had a lot of really good feedback on this actually. So Code Commute is the YouTube channel that I have. I'll put that in the chat as well. This one is literally a vlog. And as you can see, it's me driving in a car, which doesn't sound that exciting, I realize. But I'll make it more exciting because I talk about software engineering in the car. And I realize now that I say that out loud, neither of those things sound very exciting, but I'm getting a lot of good feedback. Some of these videos have more views on my primary channel, and there's only like 260 subscribers. So personally, what I like about Code Commute is, number one, I do go to the office a couple of times per week. and it keeps my brain not from melting sitting in traffic. I like to talk about things, so it's a nice outlet for me. So number one, I like that. Number two is I do get questions and comments from people where they want me to talk about different topics. I had someone write me like a 2,000 word email, not making that up, to talk through like a scenario, and I talked about it on Code Commute. So that's this one here. Managing a misleveled software engineer is me talking through their scenario and going through it. So what I would say is, if you like the approach of the live stream and just want me to stream of consciousness go through stuff, Code Commute is a channel I would recommend. It's not live, so like I'm not like reading my phone and looking at your messages and stuff. I'm literally driving a car, but it's a lot of fun to put those ones together too. Otherwise, I think that's it. Unless flashbang warning, sorry. Unless you're a content creator, then I have Brand Ghost, which is the platform that I'm building. So I'll just put a link to that as well. Brand Ghost is where I put a lot of my spare time into building this platform. So like I said at the beginning of this stream, if you're reading my social media posts on different platforms, I can basically guarantee that it's posted through Brand Ghost. So we are launching a free tier that allows you to cross-post across every platform, which is exciting for us to be able to have that ability to just share with people for free. The primary focus that we offer, though, at least right this moment, is around something called topic streams. So that way, if you're a content creator and you have valuable content that's worth reposting, so for example, I share links out to my blogs, my podcast. I don't even do it for my full-length YouTube videos yet, and I should. I can repost this stuff, and after a few months of posting it, it will start recycling if I haven't added more content. So that's the power of Brand Ghost, and then we're building and layering in all the AI and analytics onto it. So if you're a content creator, or if you have a small business and you're like, man, it's really hard to keep up with creating content, you can basically make a smaller set of content and leverage the fact that you can buy yourself some time with repeating content. So just a shout out to that as well. But folks, I think that's it. I don't see any more questions coming into the chat. So thank you so much for your time. If you are watching this right now, then this will make sense. But if you want to tune in tomorrow morning for the live stream where I'm doing live coding, I'll be here at 7 a.m. Pacific. So I will see you then if you're interested in attending. And thanks so much for being here. Infected FPS, good to see you as always. You're on a streak for sure. I don't know what the streak is, but it's a good streak.